Hey peeps, welcome back to the channel. Back in high school, I took a mission trip to a city in Mexico called Reynosa. And we were doing a mission trip and going to visit various people throughout the communities. One of the sites that we went to was actually a trash dump, a landfill. And the most shocking part about that was that people lived in the landfill, and women and children and pigs and all kinds of living creatures were coming out of that landfill, and it really broke my heart. It did another thing for me. It made me aware that whenever we throw things away, away isn't really just this vacuum, right? Away is actually an address and people live there. So that always stuck in my mind. There was a very visceral reaction that I had to throwing away trash because I always connected it to those people that we had seen. And that was the first thing that made me aware, okay, there's a place that our trash goes to. I have to really be mindful of that. And then when I was in graduate school a little bit later, I had an opportunity to live on my own, and I started thinking, how do I do this life in a sustainable way? But how do I make sustainability sustainable, something that I could do over time and not burn myself out? So I was really curious about minimalism and then sustainability and things like zero waste. I wanted to figure out how I could combine all those things all at the same time. That's how I came up with the concept of minimal waste living. I had realized that there were a lot of people in the zero waste community that were very militant about their approach, and I didn't really think that that was the best way to go. I'd been militant in other things in the past, and I found that being so strict made it not fun. So I found that minimal waste living was very enjoyable for me. One thing to note, that my minimal waste journey, my sustainability journey, was really powered also by the economics of it all. I had a graduate student budget at the time, so I was trying to figure out how to do all of this while still maintaining the budget that I had for myself. I didn't believe in going broke because I was trying to save the environment. I really thought that there was a way to do both at the same time. Save your money and then save the planet. In everything that I did, I was cognizant of those two things. Little by little, I started trading the things that I was already doing for greener alternatives. I put together a minimal waste kit that I would bring around with me. Over time, I started bringing my own silverware around with me in a cute little pouch so that I didn't have to use plasticware when I was out and about. I started recycling more, really paying attention to the back of products whenever I would buy them. Sometimes I wouldn't buy a product just because I knew the container wasn't recyclable. So yeah, I think over time, it's been really cool to see that I have now better taste in the quality of things. Now I will buy things because I know they'll last me for years before I ever have to replace it. So I will pick a more expensive, higher quality thing if I know it will last me for a longer amount of time. So that's something that's new for me. Mistakes that I made. I tend to be a pretty impulsive person when it comes to things like this. When I decided to be minimal waste, I pretty much did it overnight. I went to Home Goods and I bought all the things that I needed. I didn't throw much old stuff away because I was starting my life from scratch, coming into a new apartment, so I didn't have anything. And so all the things that I bought were, minimal waste, sustainable kind of things to begin with. So the mistake was that I kind of rushed myself. I didn't take time to pace that transition. I just kind of one day was like, boop. And I did it. That's kind of how I did with going plant-based too. I tend to be that kind of person. Another thing that I did was that I judged people. Oh, I'm so sad about this. I judged people in my life for not being as sustainably conscious as I was. And I was kind of like a bleeding heart for the environment. And I'd be like, the environment. Mentally judged people for not being aware. And I gave a lot of like really uncomfortable lectures about the environment. Spare people the lecture, just give them an alternative is what I've found that people like. So whenever I find a product or a way of doing something that is greener, I will introduce people to it simply by example. Your life is the biggest way to show people that sustainable living is good. Another mistake is that I became a martyr for the environment. So there would be things that I wanted to do and I'd just be like, oh, the environment, I can't. And I would kind of like deny myself certain things because I couldn't think of a greener alternative. I would not recommend that. If you love something, keep doing it and keep actively thinking about what substitute you could have for it, there's almost always a green substitute for everything that we're doing. I am proudest of how sustainable my period has become. And it sounds like such a weird, like, niche thing, but going back to the landfill example, while I was on the landfill in Mexico in Reynosa, we stepped over so many tampons and pads. It's one thing to like throw them away, but to think that somebody has to live amongst that made me really want to find a solution for that. For more than 4 years now, I've been using menstrual cups exclusively, and then I think the last 2 years I've integrated menstrual panties like Thinks, and Nix is a new one that I really like as well. And so because of that, I haven't used pads, panty liners, or tampons, and I'm really proud of that fact. It's been uncomfortable at times and it has been inconvenient, but when I think about the people and even the creatures in the ocean that don't have to interact with that kind of waste, I'm really relieved about that. Like, me having to deal with my own period byproducts is one thing, but for someone else to be subject to that just didn't seem right to me. I'm also really proud of my family. My family has really accepted a lot of the minimal waste principles, and I see them making strides every day. I've noticed that everyone's a little more conscious these days, and it really happened when I shut up and stopped preaching at them. I think that's my favorite part of it now, seeing how informed my family is and how they teach other people. And so I don't have to do much of that anymore because they just know. I think sometimes there's this assumption that people of color or people from marginalized communities don't care about sustainability. I think the truth is that we care about sustainability in a different type of way. When you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? What comes first? What things you must take care of? Many times sustainability is on this tier that is privileged. And sometimes people never get to that tier because they're so busy thinking about the very basic needs that they have. I can never fault anyone for that. Many times when my budget was restricted, I was stuck on the bottom parts of the pyramid where I'm like, I gotta make sure I eat and I can take care of myself within my budget. Having a sustainable option is something I cannot afford at the moment. We have to give people a break. I've always said that the burden of sustainability should never fall on individual people. It should always fall on the industry. So people who are manufacturing, people who are selling those products should take on some of the burden. And a lot of time the language that we use criminalizes people for not making sustainable choices when sustainability isn't always accessible to the average person. So that's one thing that I've learned in this journey. We can only be as green as we have access to greenery and green initiatives. And so I will never be the one who's like, oh, you're such a bad person because you're using a straw. Would I love for people to not use straws? Sure. Do I acknowledge that there's certain groups of people who need straws to function because they're differently abled and they have other types of needs that require things like straws? So there isn't a one-size-fits-all model of sustainability. Some people are motivated by the ethical side of sustainability. Some it's the environmental, some it's the economical. I would say mine is probably a combination of the economical and environmental benefits of sustainability. That's probably my main driving force. God made us to be stewards of the earth, and I just take my stewardship kind of seriously these days. Sustainability is sustainability no matter what it looks like. So at the end of the day, I kind of got over myself and stopped trying to make Instagram-worthy life out of sustainability. Just live that life. So stop trying to curate your life. Just do it. That's my video. That has been my journey. It has been a blast. Yeah, I don't know if I've been so satisfied in my life. It's so weird. Like, nothing in my life looks like how I thought it was gonna look, but this is the most satisfied that I have felt in a long time. So that's my story. Bye, y'all.